Time now for Korea Book Club, our weekly segment where we delve into the world of Korean literature and books through works in translation and beyond. Joining me this week, we have a cultural essayist Colin Marshall, host of the podcast Korean 한국, and author of the essay collection 한국 유학 금지. Colin, hello. It's great to have you with us again.
Jang-ho, thanks for having me back.
Okay, I see that you've brought in the book you are reviewing for us today, and I have to say it is quite a formidable-looking book.
Yes, not only is it 430 pages long, it's the 8th book its author has put out in the past 5 years.
Wow.
That author is Kang-myoung, and this book is Mise Chwajole Shide. It's a collection of newspaper and magazine columns he's written since the mid-2010s.
Yes, and as this is the last Wednesday of the month, it is a book that is only available in Korean. Once a month, we look at current bestsellers or notable books that have not yet been translated to get a sense of what Korean people are reading today. Now, the title, 미세 좌절의 시대, 미세 좌절, that is an interesting term. We all know about 미세먼지, the fine dust in the air that's giving us trouble here in Seoul just a few weeks ago. But what does Chang, the author, mean by 미세 좌절?
Yes, this is a term coined, I believe, by Kang-myoung. We could translate the title of the book as The Age of Micro-Frustration or Micro-Despair. As he explains in one of its essays, he made this term up to describe a feeling he senses having become much more common in recent years. Now, we've all had times where our ambitions haven't come to fruition or where events in one way or another haven't worked out the way we've planned. But Kang-myoung sees that experience as having become much more common in recent years. And for many of us, perhaps especially here in Korea, things not going right or quite right has come to feel more like the rule than the exception. And when enough of these mise chwajol, these micro-frustrations, these incidences of micro-despair pile up, it enervates us. We stop even trying to improve our lot in life. And in interviews about the book, the author, Kang-myoung, has discussed how as soon as other people hear the term, they recognize or just feel inside exactly what he means by that.
Very interesting. I would say many people in other countries as well will connect with this sort of idea as well, but at the same time, perhaps, as you mentioned, Korean people are feeling this sort of feeling more acutely, especially in recent years. In fact, I understand that Chang specifically says that this is a 21st century ailment. What does he say about what's causing it? How does he explore this idea?
All right, it's an ailment of our times. And as I say, this is a collection of newspaper columns. And in each column, he has only so much space to work with. You can read them in 5 minutes. No sooner does he describe something than he's about to wrap things up. But with mise chwajol, no doubt a multi-causal phenomenon, he does make reference to the effects of rapid technological change. And as you know, Korea has become a society of so-called early adopters, embracing practically every new consumer technology just as soon as it comes along. What psychological effect this has on the public has become a subject of interest, and especially for Kang-myoung, who's actually best known as a science fiction novelist. And in this book's title column, Mise Chwajole Shide, he even cites the work of the American writer Alvin Toffler, whose book Future Shock examined the social problems that arise when human beings living in industrial society experience, and I quote, too much change in too short a period of time. Seeing as that book was published in 1970, we can hardly call this a new subject, but I think we've all felt an unusually intense sensation of technological acceleration in the past few years.
I also think anyone who's studied Korean modern history will know too much change in too short a time will sound very familiar.
Compressed modernity is the phrase I always hear, right?
Indeed, yes. It could be a subtitle, I think, of modern Korean society, I would say. Every generation is so different, and Korea has gone through so many different things, has such different experiences. How that has affected Korean society, I think it's hard to say, but perhaps that is an unfortunate side effect of this, is this sort of environment of micro-frustration, as he calls it. It's interesting that you said that Chang was actually a science fiction writer. I imagine that would make him perhaps more alert to these sorts of developments.
He is indeed, and he's been alert for quite some time. Growing up, he wrote and posted sci-fi stories to Hitel. Do you know about Hitel?
Hitel.
Hitel, the pre-World Wide Web internet service that was popular
yes,
in Korea.
Of course, yes.
Late 80s, early 90s, so before the internet as we know it today. It was very early, but Korea had it before many other countries in that form. So he wrote sci-fi there, and he published his first novel, Clone Project, in 1996, when he was still a student at at Yonsei University. His most recent one, 당신이 보고 싶어 하는 세상, was also science fiction, but by no means has he confined himself entirely to that genre. In fact, one of his best-known books is a serial novel called Rumer People. It's a work of, shall we say, social realism that observes the occupants of one floor of a building in Shincheon, a neighborhood in which he once lived, and in which I used to live myself, in fact, and I suspect that the model for the Rumer building of the title may be the very building I lived in. The names sound very similar.
Right, it sounds like you have a connection to his writing quite deeply, it seems. And it sounds like as if Chang he has this unusual skill, I would say, perhaps, given that he's demonstrated a strong interest in science and speculation, as well as an ability to observe everyday life. He manages to blend all that together.
It's true, and he's written even more widely across forms and genres than that would imply. I think we can trace the breadth of his work back to the life he once led as a newspaper reporter, in fact for 11 straight years before he became a full-time novelist. And ideally a journalist, as you well know, has sufficient curiosity to come to grips with the basics of any field or set of ideas quickly, as well as the communication skills to present that knowledge in an interesting and understandable manner to the average reader. And in reinventing himself as a novelist, or returning to the literary mode he first pursued in his youth, back on Haitel, he brings his imagination into play as well. And that imagination may have done most of all to make him quite a popular writer today here in Korea. That and the clarity of his prose, regardless of subject matter, which is another quality that often people attribute to his formation as a journalist. He's got that in common with Kim Hoon, another favorite reporter turned novelist of mine from an older generation.
Right, and you said Chang left journalism to turn a full-time novelist, but at the same time, I guess this book shows that he hasn't put his old career entirely behind him. It is a thick collection of newspaper columns.
Right, he's kept up the columnist work. He's more recently put writing columns behind him after this big collection, but you're absolutely right to point this out. It illuminates an important difference, I think, between the public role of the writer in Korea and in the West. Now, in the US, the United States, where I'm from, novelists are not often called to comment directly on the state of the society or the state of the world. But I get the impression here in Korea, as soon as you make your official debut as a writer, you win a prize, the requests start coming in from various media outlets. Kim-myoung, who's one of the most famous novelists active in this country, has written about having to swear off TV appearances just to get some writing done. Now, I don't write novels, and I'm nothing compared to Kim-myoung in fame, but since publishing my own book a few months ago, I too have found myself writing columns in newspapers, and for me it was good timing indeed that Kang-myoung has published this book, because it's a collection of about 100 reflective, amusing, and very well-crafted examples of the form.
Right, and so we also appreciate you making the time to appear on our show
thank you.
as
Thank
well,
you.
Colin. You've mentioned some of Chang's qualities as a novelist, but perhaps what makes him a good columnist in your eyes as well?
Well, I think, practically speaking, spending more than a decade in the trenches of reportage, as Kang-myoung did, has made him able to meet a deadline. And that's not an ability for which novelists tend to be especially renowned. Right. I mean, I'm not going to stereotype, but these are different different professional qualities. And with an awareness of the deadline comes the instinct to turn every personal observation and experience into grist for the mill, even to develop it into a meditation on modern Korean society. What is it? Where did it come from? Where is it going? In some columns he sets off from then current events like a national election or the COVID-19 pandemic. In others, from ostensibly minor phenomena like the disappearance of the romantic comedy, or the ethics of ordering delivery on a rainy day, or the ever-intensifying flavors of snack foods, especially the increasing spiciness of packaged ramyeon, which he likens to the increasingly stimulating emptiness of so much digital media today.
Okay, so quite an array of musings then about modern Korean life. And he's not just a keen observer of Korean life as it's lived not just offline, but as it's lived online as well, right?
Yes, and that particular thread in his work has just come forth in another dimension of popular culture. In 2015, he published 댓글 부대, a novel about the manipulation of public opinion on the internet. And just weeks ago, a film adaptation by director An-guk-jin of this movie, with the same name, the eponymous 댓글 부대, opened in Korean theaters. And this after a movie based on 한국이 싫어서, the other novel Kang-myoung published in 2015. He put out 2 novels that year. Started off the Busan International Film Festival just last fall. So he's blowing up in movies, you could say.
Yes, he's very prolific once again. So we recently actually reviewed the 댓글부대, or Troll Factory as it's called in English, on Movie Spotlight, and our critics gave quite a good review of it too. And I remember talking about 한국이 싫어서 before as well. I mean, how can you forget a title like that? That's so arresting, which in English would be, I guess, Because I Hate Korea.
Right, that's how they translated it for this film. And it's fitting enough a title for a story about a character so frustrated with Korean society that she moves to New Zealand. Incidentally, I actually know an American academic, a Korean studies guy in New Zealand, who's long been interested in translating the original book, 한국이 싫어서. Last I talked to him about it, he wanted to translate the title as Because Korea Sucks. Now, that would be an attention-grabbing title, perhaps a bit too attention-grabbing.
Sure, but again, the nuances of translation still. Well, it certainly seems that the author Kang-myoung is very much someone who's very much of the zeitgeist in Korea at the moment. He's able to tap into it. It sounds like this essay collection is a great way to perhaps tap into his mind, but also tap into what a lot of Korean people are connecting with as well at the moment, would you say?
I think so. And he's not necessarily the strongest optimist about Korea or about life in the 21st century, but nor is he a pessimist. He does think hard about, what is the solution to, what are the problems we have, why do we have them, and what solutions can I find within my sort of 600-word columns? You can get a start on thinking in any case, and that's kind of what he wanted to do with all this writing, columnistically, if I can use that word, just to observe something and to get his readers to think for themselves about it.
Well, it sounds like a fascinating essay collection. Once again, it's called 미세자절의 시대 by Kang-myoung, and that was our pick for Korea Book Club this week. Colin, thank you very much for that review. We look forward to the next one. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Jang-ho.
And that's where we sign off today. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to bring you the latest updates and analysis of the key stories coming out from Korea. I've been your host, Kwon Jang-ho, and thank you as always for listening. Goodbye.